Static hisses, in the dark, like the world is holding its breath. A faint voice crackles through the interference, broken, distant. If you can hear this, stay inside. The picture snaps into focus. A newsroom under harsh, two bright lights. The anchors sit rigid, smiles stretched in. Their eyes keep darting toward the control booth. Sirens wail faintly in the background, just enough to bleed through the insulated walls. A red banner scrolls across the bottom of the screen. Breaking coverage, shelter in place. The camera drifts closer. The anchors begin to speak, their voices steady but strained. Somewhere behind the glass, a shadow moves. The sound of the emergency broadcast system kicks in, cutting through everything. The tone holds, long and sharp, until the voice takes over. This is not a test. Last night on Channel 9, cold open, the picture flickers before it fully comes in. The kind of glitch you'd expect from a storm-battered antenna, except there's no storm tonight, just the darkness outside and the faint wail of sirens riding the wind. The Channel 9 logo stutters onto the screen, accompanied by a warped, slowing down version of its usual upbeat intro music. Somewhere in the mix, it sounds like static is eating the notes alive. Then, almost too abruptly, the scene cuts to the news desk. Two anchors sit side by side under bright studio lights. Daniel Brooks, mid-50s, weathered face that's used to staying calm under pressure, and Marcy Vega, early 30s, polished hair and perfect makeup, but with a sheen of sweat already gathering at her temple. The newsroom set behind them looks the same as always. Glossy wood desk, big digital screen with the Channel 9 skyline graphic, but the camera feels just slightly off-center, like it's been manned by someone who doesn't usually run it. Daniel shuffles the papers in front of him. His hands aren't shaking exactly, but the movement is too quick, too tight, like he's forcing himself to keep control. "Good evening," he begins, his baritone voice steady enough for now. We continue our live coverage of the ongoing emergency situation unfolding across the metropolitan area. If you are just joining us, authorities have expanded the shelter-in-place order to include the entire county. Residents are urged to. A faint thump echoes from somewhere beyond the set. Daniel doesn't flinch, but his eyes flick to the side for a half second before returning to the camera. Marcy takes over, glancing down at her script. Her voice is softer, but with an edge, like she's thinking about every word before she says it. And the emergency alert system has now been activated on all radio and television stations. We will be simulcasting instructions from the city's Emergency Operations Center as soon as they are available. A soft crackle bleeds into the audio, not the usual kind of microphone feedback, but more like an open radio channel cutting through. For a moment, a voice can be heard beneath theirs, garbled and distant. Marcy pauses, her lips pressing together tightly before she pushes on. Daniel clears his throat, forcing the next line. Authorities are reminding citizens that this is not a time to panic, but a time to remain indoors, remain calm, and the feed glitches again. Picture momentarily replaced by a blocky digital freeze frame of the Channel 9 logo. When the image snaps back, Daniel is still speaking, but the words come with a subtle hitch now, like he's thinking about something other than the teleprompter. Behind them, a shadow moves in the frosted glass of the control booth window. It's quick, almost nothing, but it catches Marcy's eyes. She glances back, then quickly down at her papers, not wanting the audience to notice her reaction. Another faint noise bleeds into the studio, this time a low, dragging scrape, followed by a muffled shout. The director's voice buzzes in Daniel's earpiece. His eyes widen, but he keeps talking. We have been informed that the National Guard has established multiple checkpoints along the I-94 corridor. Evacuation routes remain closed until further notice. We urge all residents to comply with law enforcement and emergency personnel. Marcy jumps in quickly, her words too fast, betraying her nerves. And we will now switch briefly to an official message from the emergency alert system. Please listen carefully. There's a subtle exchange between them. Daniel looking like he wants to say something off script. Marcy giving the tiniest shake of her head. The camera pushes in slightly, just enough for the viewer to feel like something is closing in on the set itself. Then the audio shifts. The usual crisp studio clarity is replaced by a near distant sound, like you've suddenly tuned into an old emergency radio station. The bright studio lighting seems harsher now, making the anchor's expressions harder to hide. Daniel sits up straighter, forcing a professional smile one last time. This is Channel 9, bringing you continuous coverage. We now go live to WX103 Emergency Radio. A deep hiss of static swallows the studio's sound, and the faint echo of the newsroom fades. A new voice, not seen, only heard, begins to speak. And just like that, the real broadcast begins. Emergency radio static hisses for a few seconds longer and feels comfortable, like the line is struggling to stay alive. Then a deep male voice cuts through, the kind you expect from official warnings, steady and deliberate, meant to calm the public. This is an emergency message from the Department of Public Safety, authorized by the Governor and the National Guard. This message is effective immediately for all residents of Metro County and surrounding regions. There's a pause, just a little too long before the voice resumes. Stay inside. Lock all doors and windows. Barricade entry points with heavy furniture. Do not attempt to travel at this time. Repeat, do not attempt to travel at this time. The sound quality is rough, like an old CB radio signal, layered with faint white noise. Somewhere underneath, there's the faintest rhythmic thumping. Could be wind rattling a door. Could be something else entirely. If you are bitten, scratched, or otherwise injured by one of the infected, you must isolate immediately. Infection can spread rapidly and render the victim a threat to others within minutes. Do not attempt to transport infected individuals. They cannot be helped. A faint crackle interrupts the transmission. The announcer exhales slowly, as if steadying himself, then continues. The National Guard is working to contain the outbreak. Law enforcement has been authorized to use deadly force on anyone displaying signs of infection. For your safety, do not approach military personnel unless instructed. Obey all orders without delay. The low thumping grows louder for a moment. Maybe footsteps on metal, maybe fists against a door. The voice hesitates, mid-sentence. All emergency shelters are currently at capacity. Temporary aid stations are being established at that. The voice stops again. Distantly, a woman's voice bleeds through the channel. Frantic and they're here, they're inside. There's a burst of static like someone grabbed the mic. Another man's voice, strained and urgent, barks something off mic. Keep broadcasting. The original announcer comes back, but his voice is thinner now, the professional mask cracking just slightly. Citizens are urged to remain indoors. Cover windows with heavy material to block visibility from outside. Avoid drawing attention to your location. Extinguish all visible lights at night. In the background, something slams hard. Wood splintering. The woman screams again. Someone else shouts, "Shut that door." A heavy metallic bang follows. The announcer continues, but now his words are clipped, rushed. The infected are highly aggressive and extremely dangerous. They are attracted to loud noises and visible movement. Do not, under any circumstances, attempt to make contact. The low thumping sound returns, now much faster, almost pounding. If you encounter the infected, do not engage unless you have no choice. They will not stop. Aim for the head. Another interruption. This time a loud crash, the sound of a chair toppling. The muffled shouting is closer now, more desperate. Repeat, aim for the head. The announcer says again, voice rising, as if that's the only part of his script that truly matters anymore. A loud metallic clank echoes over the line. Someone yells, "Move, move, move." The announcer breaks script completely. There in the hall. Lock it, lock it. His voice cuts off abruptly, replaced by a deafening burst of static. The transmission hangs in limbo for a few seconds. When it returns, it's the same man's voice, but different. The composure is gone. This is WX103. God help us. They're fast. Faster than his breath catches. And he goes silent. Static surges again, the kind that feels heavy, like the line is bleeding out. Then, just barely audible, there's the wet tearing sound of something you don't want to imagine, and the scrape of a chair dragging across the floor. Finally, there's nothing but the low hum of the open channel. No voices, no instructions. Just the sound of a microphone left live in a room that's gone wrong. Audio overlay. The screen glitches for a half second. The WX103 audio still running under it. Raw, grainy, and uncomfortably personal now. This is WX103. God help us. They're fast. Faster than... His words cut in and out like a bad dream playing through an old cassette player. But instead of cutting fully back to the clean Channel 9 feed, the TV station's control room keeps both running at once. On screen, Daniel Brooks is still at the desk. He's angled toward the camera, but not looking directly into it, as if listening to something in his earpiece. His lips are pressed into a hard line. Marcy Vega is shuffling papers that clearly have nothing to do with the broadcast. Anymore, her fingers moving just to have something to do. The audio clash makes the moment unbearable. Daniel's voice starting to speak over the garbled WX103 feed, both of them stepping on each other's words. Daniel tries to keep the anchor tone. We're monitoring the situation. WX103, still bleeding through. Don't let them see you turn off the lights. Daniel falters, just slightly, but enough that it's noticeable. His jaw twitches as he tries again. Authorities are requesting that all residents remain indoors, and WX103 interrupts, louder now, with a sudden yell from someone off mic. They're in the hallway. Marcy visibly flinches, her pen clattering against the desk. She shoots a quick glance at the control booth behind the camera. The newsroom feels wrong now. Too quiet except for the hum of the lights and that awful, distant chaos bleeding in from the radio. Somewhere just beyond the set, there's the faint sound of movement. The scuff of shoes across tile, the metallic click of something being locked. Daniel leans slightly toward Marcy, not realizing his mic will pick up the whisper. Why is the feed still running? Marcy whispers back, eyes still on her notes. Control says, we've lost clean audio. This is all we've got. Daniel straightens, forces a breath, then tries to press forward as though nothing's wrong. We are awaiting further instructions from local officials in the Department of Public Safety. WX103 cuts in again, completely unscripted now. If you're hearing this, you need to stay quiet. The emergency announcer is cut off by a heavy crash in the background, followed by screaming. The newsroom camera jerks slightly. Maybe the operator's startled, maybe just the mounting tension getting to him. The shot widens a touch, enough to catch the far left corner of the studio, where an open doorway leads into a shadowed hallway. That hallway is empty. For now, the WX103 announcer gasps for breath, then his voice turns into a strained plea. Do not try to run. You won't make it. The sentence cuts in half by static. Marcy's breathing is audible now. Shallow, quick. She presses the tip of her pen hard into her notes, making small punctures. Daniel, still trying to keep composure, says something into his earpiece, nods faintly, then looks back into the lens. If you are with loved ones, keep them close. Lock doors, stay away from windows. WX103's voice shatters the moment with something primal. A scream, not the announcer's, but Somio and Elsa's, raw and full of terror. The newsroom sound tech must panic, because instead of muting the feed, he cranks the WX103 volume for a second, blasting the chaos over Daniel's voice. Now the overlap is total. Daniel is telling viewers to stay calm, while in the background the radio is broadcasting the sound of a door breaking down, furniture splintering, and a man shouting, "They're inside." The two layers clash in a horrible duet. The calm public-facing mask and the raw collapse of everything behind the curtain. Daniel freezes mid-sentence. For the first time, he looks directly into the camera. No anchor smile, no script. Just a man who knows exactly what's happening. WX103 fizzles out into static for a few seconds, but the open mic keeps catching scraps. Boots pounding, gunshots, glass shattering. A shadow passes across that open hallway in the background of the newsroom. It's quick, out of focus, impossible to make out clearly, but enough for Marcy's eyes to dart toward it. She swallows hard. I think we're going to cut to a station break, she says, her voice thin. Daniel doesn't answer. His gaze is still locked on the hallway. The WX-103 feed hiccups again, returning just in time for one final, breathless warning. If they see you, you're already dead. That's when something bangs against the studio wall. Once, twice, then a slow dragging sound follows it. The newsroom falls silent except for the hum of the lights and the faint hiss of the radio feed. Nobody moves. The overlay lingers like this for another 5 seconds. Then the control booth makes the call. The WX-103 feed cuts out entirely, and for the first time since the broadcast began, the newsroom is alone with itself. Back to the TV studio, the hiss of WX-103 fades into silence. No transition, no music. Just the hum of the lights and the distant cry of sirens outside. Daniel Brooks sits stiff at the news desk, hands flat on his notes. His gaze is locked somewhere just past the camera, as if he's waiting for a cue that isn't coming. Beside him, Marcy Vega forces a brittle smile. Her pen taps against the paper in quick, nervous bursts. "This is Channel 9, she says, voice thin. "We're still here. We'll continue to keep you informed as best we can. We encourage everyone to stay calm and remain indoors until further notice." Daniel clears his throat, slipping into the practiced tone that's carried him through decades of breaking news. These are difficult times. Our newsroom is working around the clock to bring you the most accurate. A faint metallic clank cuts through the air. Not loud, but enough to make Marcy glance toward the control booth window. Behind the glass, silhouettes are moving quickly, one of them shouting into a headset. Daniel presses on. "We have confirmed multiple sightings of infected within a 2-mile radius of our station. Authorities are." The studio doors slam open. A man in a Channel 9 polo staggers in. His left shoulder is drenched in blood, eyes wide and unfocused. There in the parking lot, he shouts, voice cracking. There, a deep guttural roar echoes from the hallway. The man flinches. "You've got to lock it now." The camera swings slightly toward the open door. Shadows slide across the far wall, large and jerky in movement. Daniel rushes toward the man. "What happened?" "They got Mike." The man gasps, grabbing Daniel's arm, pulled him under the van. It was fast. A loud crack snaps through the air, with splintering. One of the side doors shudders violently in its frame. Marcy's headset slips from her neck. "Control, lock that." From the booth, cut to break. Cut to break. No one does. A producer rushes into view, waving frantically toward the back. "We have to move." The injured man stumbles forward, nearly tripping over a cable. The side door bucks again, bending outward at the hinges. Daniel turns to the camera. His voice drops to a firm, deliberate warning. "If you're watching this, do not go outside. Do not." The door bursts inward. The camera catches only chaos. A blur of gray flesh and stringy hair as the figure slams into the injured man. The sound is worse than the sight. Wet tearing, bones cracking, the scream cutting short. Marcy gasps, backing away until she collides with the desk. Daniel shouts, his words lost under the monster's guttural roar. The camera jolts as the operator retreats. The creature hunches over the man's body, feeding with horrifying efficiency. From the hallway, another shadow appears, smaller, faster, darting toward the breach. The studio erupts. Crew members shout over each other, footsteps pounding the floor. The creature looks up, eyes catching the light, and unleashes a shriek that makes the mic distort. Daniel grabs Marcy's arm, pulling her toward the opposite exit. The producer waves them on, shouting unheard orders. The booth screams again. Switch to emergency audio. Now. The picture glitches, pixel blocks eating the frame, and suddenly, the voice of WX-103 is back. Emergency radio resumes. The picture dissolves into glitchy pixel blocks, colors smearing before vanishing into black. The sound drops out for a heartbeat, leaving only a low hiss. Then, the voice of WX-103 cuts through again. This is WX-103, emergency radio. The announcer's voice is ragged now, stripped of its earlier authority. Every breath is audible, each word heavier than the last. If you are still receiving this broadcast, you need to listen carefully. The transmission crackles. Somewhere behind the voice, a chair scrapes across the floor. Papers shuffle. A door creaks. The infected, they move fast, faster than you think. They don't get tired. The words tumble out unevenly, as if he's no longer reading from a script but talking straight to whoever is still alive out there. A muffled sound, a slam echoes in the background. The announcer pauses. They're close, he mutters, almost to himself. Too close. He exhales sharply, regaining just enough composure to continue. You must stay silent. No lights, no shouting. No noise of any kind. If they see you, if they hear you, it's over. Do you understand? The transmission cuts for half a second, replaced by a burst of static and what might be a scream in the distance. When the voice comes back, it's tighter, rushed. We've lost contact with the west side of the building. Security doors are holding. For now. If you're in the city, don't wait for rescue. There is no rescue. You have to find your own way out. Another sound filters through. The sharp clang of metal. It's followed by the rhythmic pounding of something heavy against the door. Each hit is closer together, faster. The announcer stumbles over his words. They're at the stairwell. How did they? He stops, breath-catching. Someone else shouts in the background. Hold it. Keep it shut. Gunshots crack through the feed. Short, sharp bursts. The pounding on the door stops. For a moment, the announcer's breathing is hard now. Every inhale, a shaky drag. If you have a weapon, use it only if you must. You won't scare them, you won't make them run. In the distance, faint but distinct, a door groans open. They're in, he whispers. The voice on the radio changes. No longer measured, no longer a broadcast. Now it's just a man, speaking to no one and everyone at the same time. I can hear them, I can smell them. A deep, wet snarl seeps through the static. He swallows hard. Don't let them get close. If they do, his voice fades. The last words muffled by another loud crash. Someone screams. Then there's chaos. Running footsteps, more gunfire, a heavy thud. The sound distorts, clipping at the mic. The announcer is shouting now. Fall back. Fall. His voice is cut short by a guttural roar. So close, it distorts the signal. The radio becomes a blur of noise. Static, shouting, the tearing sound of something being dragged across the floor. And then, silence. A faint electrical hum lingers. Seconds pass. Just when it seems the transmission is dead, the voice returns. Quieter, raspier. If anyone can hear this. A pause. You need to get underground, the sewers. They don't go down there. The sound of movement again. Fast, scrambling. Something metal tips over with a clang. They've found me. The voice is calm now, almost resigned. I hope you make it. The mic picks up one final sound. Not a roar, not a scream, but the wet, sucking breath of something feeding. Static swallows it all. Final moments, static holds for several seconds. A deep hiss swallowing the last trace of the announcer's voice. Then, without warning, the Channel 9 feed flickers back on its chaos. The camera has been knocked off its tripod and now rests at an awkward tilt, giving a skewed view of the studio. The polished news desk is empty, its glossy surface smeared with streaks of red. Papers are scattered across the floor like leaves in a storm. One of the studio lights swings overhead, its harsh glare slicing the scene into dizzying flashes. Daniel Brooks is in the far corner, one arm braced against the wall, pulling Marcy Vega with him toward the rear exit. Her heels scrape against the floor, her free hand clutching a cordless mic she never dropped. Both of them are breathing hard, their faces twisted with panic. In the foreground, the injured Channel 9 staffer lies still, a dark pool spreading beneath him. His body is partially obscured by the hunched silhouette of something feeding, shoulders heaving, jaws working with wet, methodical movements. The sound is awful, a deep tearing punctuated by wet gulps. A low snarl vibrates through the room. The thing lifts its head. Its face, if it can be called that, turns toward the camera, mouth slick, eyes fixed on something just off screen. The rear exit door slams open. A producer bursts in, waving frantically at Daniel and Marcy. Come on, move, he yells, his voice cracking. The camera tilts further as someone trips over a cable. The frame briefly catches the hallway beyond the studio. dim flickering with emergency lights. More shapes move there, not running, stalking. The feeding creature lets out a guttural cry that shakes the mic. In the same instant, another burst of movement erupts from the hallway. 2, maybe 3 more of them rushing in. Their feet slap against the floor, too quickly, too heavily, like they're hitting with more force than bone should allow. Daniel shoves Marcy toward the rear exit. She stumbles through, but he hesitates, glancing back toward the desk. His eyes lock on the camera. For half a second, he looks right at the audience. No words, just a stare that says everything. Then the nearest creature lunges. The impact knocks Daniel out of frame. There was a scream, raw and sudden, cut short by a sickening crunch. The producer at the rear door shouts something incoherent before slamming it shut. The camera's mic struggles to keep up with the layered noise. Snarls, shouts, pounding footsteps, the scrape of something heavy being dragged. One of the studio lights crashes down, exploding into sparks. The scene briefly blooms in blinding white before plunging into shadow. In the strobing aftermath, figures seem to flicker in and out of existence. Crew members sprinting for cover, shadows stretching along the walls, creatures darting from one side of the room to the other. A loud slam echoes from the rear of the studio. Someone in the control booth is screaming, "Kill the feed, kill it," but the feed doesn't cut. Instead, the picture distorts. Thick black bars slide across the screen, tearing the image apart in jagged bands. For a moment, the audio drops into a warped hum. Then, just as suddenly, it comes back, even louder, as if the chaos has been amplified. The camera catches one last clear shot. The feeding creature lifting its head, blood dripping from its chin. Behind it, another figure, taller, leaner, moving with a predatory smoothness, steps into the light. Its mouth opens slowly, deliberately, revealing rows of broken, jagged teeth. The taller one turns toward the camera and lets out a scream so high and piercing it overloads the audio completely. The picture freezes mid-screen. For 2 seconds, the frozen image burns on the screen. Then, black, the emergency alert system tone blares. White text appears against the black. This is not a test. Shelter in place. The words hold for 5 seconds. Then the text dissolves into pure static. No picture, no voices. No signal dot, just the endless, hungry hiss of dead air. The static fades, replaced by a low hum that lingers in the dark. No more voices, no more instructions. Just the empty hiss of a signal that's never coming back. A slow text fade appears. This was the last known broadcast from Channel 9. Beat of silence. Then my voice cuts in. This is Whispers Between Worlds. We upload horror daily. Stay tuned, if you can.